Okay, we are live. This is The Secret, How to Fight CPS and Win, and I'm here with a very special guest, Miss Afton Carroll. Miss Carroll, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Good, good. What state are you from?
I'm from California, but I live in Colorado now.
Okay, and you were somehow involved with CPS?
Yes.
Can you tell us a chronological story of what's been happening?
Um, okay, so in 2019, in March, my daughter was assaulted by my stepbrother. She got in the car and told me a story that was pretty detailed, pretty graphic about what had happened to her. And I took her to the hospital. She asked me if she could get an exam like how mommy gets. And she had a SANE exam done. There was evidence her hymen was perforated. It just, I was dealing with the police and I trusted them to find justice because she named her perp. And instead, CPS came in and kind of just clouded everything. Everything they did was just adding salt to the wound. Like they lied, they manipulated stuff. I could not believe that this was really happening to me because I looked to them for a voice of reason, for justice. And these people, they told me that they wanted me to have her in for a forensic interview. When my daughter met this caseworker, her whole body started shaking. Like she had been through enough. She had just had a pelvic exam, and I said, you know what? She needs a couple of days. And she thought I was trying to avoid a UA or something. And she kept accusing me of stuff and texting me on the phone. And I was like, I lost my temper with her. And I told her to leave me alone. I said, I know what my daughter needs. So in a couple of days, we'll be ready to do the forensic interview. I'm the one that took her to the hospital. It's not like I was trying to hide anything. I'm not the one that. Anyways, that night after I kind of cussed her out via text, I had a feeling she was going to come and try and steal my child. She showed up twice with the police that night to come and take my child from where she had dropped me off at. And I had already knew, so I took my daughter to my baby's dad's mom's house, and they had my mother convinced that they were just trying to help. And she eventually told them where my daughter was. Like, this woman was acting like my daughter was a fugitive. She's like calling me going, "Where's the child?" And I was like, I signed over to somebody else. She's like, "That's not how it works." They were pinging my phone like there's police following me around in this parking lot, and they're driving by real slow. I didn't have a child with me. And like, that's all they were looking for. And I was like, wow. So I sold the phone. I was like, follow this. I just couldn't believe how it all happened. And then I got a text message on another phone from my mother the next day saying, "Courtney's in foster care." And she was like, "Oh, they're just trying to help Afton." I'm like, "No, they're not." Like, everything got shifted from my daughter being assaulted to what I was up to on my spare time. And it was awful. Like, they lied to me about everything. They said, "Oh, we're going to do our own investigation." I ordered a copy of my discovery, and I had to ask for it about 6 times to get the actual full discovery. And it said they did not investigate actually anything. And that was disappointing, but I kind of figured because they were just talking to me about, well, if you want your daughter back, you have to enroll in services. And I'm like, so I have to be on drugs to get my child back from you? That makes no sense. Like, they falsified my UA results because I got my discovery. It said I was at the highest level for methamphetamine, which is not even possible. Like, it said 5,000 or whatever the maximum level was. And they kind of paused after they called and told me my results. Like, there's so many things they did that was just cold-hearted. And I went to treatment. I did the sober living thing, and after I was in sober living for about 2 months, they told me, my GAL contacted me and said, "We're going to go ahead and give custody to your mother despite your efforts." And I was like, why? And something about a year-long rule. But even worse, they put my daughter, I skipped this part. So they took her from me in March. In October, they put her back in the home she was assaulted in with one of the possible perps of her case, who was my stepfather, the other one being my stepbrother. Despite my objections, the lawyer I had just fired finally acted like she kind of cared because she was pretty dismayed by what the caseworker and my daughter's GAL had said when they were like, oh yeah, she's going to go live back with my mother and stepfather. And they were like, oh. I'm like, oh, now you act like you care. You know, it was just crazy. And I called and I yelled at this woman about it for about an hour and a half. And I read the trails report and she said, Miss Carroll was talking in circles. That's not how it happened at all. She was talking to me going, I am so sorry. I can only imagine what it would be like to be in your shoes. And I was just like, they're so manipulative. What if I was actually at their mercy and they actually had me convinced that what they were doing was right and that I deserved what they were doing to me? And so I started this page on Facebook to reach out to all the people that I had heard had dealt with CPS. And we kind of kept it private, but I mean, they convince these people that it's their fault that they lose their child because whatever, if they pick up a pipe or whatever, and they deserve to have the removal happen, which is so traumatic. You know, when I got that text about my daughter being in foster care, that my mind shifted a lot. And it was traumatizing. And I haven't had her back since. I allocated my rights in December. And
what did you say you did? What to your rights?
I allocated them to my mother. And then at the last minute, they put my stepfather on the agreement, which was kind of not cool for me because he's one of the possible perps of her case. He's acting like he didn't do anything. And I have to just cope with that. I was on supervised visits. My mother was supervising them until just recently I got a job in where my mom lives. And I was able to stay like for a few days at a time. That's the most time I spent with my child in 3 years. And time keeps going by. My daughter never got justice. You know, she believes that if she comes forward with the truth, she's going to be punished for it. I mean, I found this video on her phone a few months ago, and I ended up calling a caseworker about it in Arapahoe County. They had this other woman call me in Douglas County, which is the one I've dealt with mainly, and out here in Colorado. And they said it was, in fact, kitty porn that I found on her phone, and it was unfounded, just like the other case. And it's just like crazy how this has ended up like this because I loved being mom, you know, and I just feel like I have a case. I want to sue them kind of like I'm super upset about the way they did me, you know, and there's nothing close to justice about that. I go to court dates and having no idea what I was going there for. I'm signing papers, not knowing what they are. They're just telling me to do it, you know, and that's kind of a lot of information. I could go on for days. I tried to simplify it.
When you say that they were telling you to sign paperwork that you didn't know what it said, who's they?
When I went to the courthouse at family court, the public defender and the GAL, my daughter's GAL, whoever was involved with the case, my caseworker, they didn't tell me what any of the documents were. They just said, just sign this and then you can go. And I'm like, okay. They made me give up my daughter's social security card and her birth certificate. I didn't know I had options. I've been involved with the court system before and I understand that system. You know what you're getting yourself into there because they tell you, look, this is what's going to happen. There was nothing like that going on at the courts. And I just was so blown away that was my justice system doing me like that, you know. And when I was doing good, when I was in the sober living place, the judge was horrible to me. Like, she's like, oh yeah, well, we'll see if that lasts. Like, I don't think it's right how I got done. And they probably do it to everybody, if, you know, not most of the people at least that they deal with in that county. And that's wrong. I mean,
Ms. Carroll, let me ask you this. Having gone through this process and losing your child, what would you say to people who are just getting involved with or involved with CPS?
Record everything. And that's what I try to tell people, and I have in the past. Keep SD cards. Put your information on the SD cards. Record every phone call, every personal interaction in person. They say don't record it. Do it anyways, because you know what? They will twist what you say up. I read the trails reports, and they twisted up everything I said to make me look stupid, you know, and keep record of everything. So that way you have proof, because if one day you appeal you have a chance, because if you don't keep proof, they will shred everything they can because they are dirty, and they just don't do anything without questioning, why is this happening?
Well,
Because, go ahead.
during this process, did you have an attorney?
No.
They didn't appoint you an attorney?
Oh, they did, but it was like a public defender kind of situation. They were like all working together. They all knew each other. And the last one I had, this guy he was slick, but I could totally tell it was like he was in the same room with them, with the GAL, my daughter's GAL, the people who were against me. Every time I spoke with him, that's what I felt like. And I had to take and go over a couple of the court dates that I had over the phone. And actually, when I listened to it after we had court, their voices were not in them, which was really weird. Only my voice I could hear. I don't know if it was my recorder app needing to be updated or what, but I was like, what? Where did their voices go? So they didn't help me very much at all. They appointed me a GAL to explain to me why they were doing the things they were doing. They told me to take a mental health eval. She said, just, if you want to go to inpatient, which is what my criminal attorney recommended, then do that, but stay on your medications. And that was the only thing they recommended after my assessment. And they weren't satisfied with that. They wanted another one. And it was just, they were relentless. And then they just quit talking to me.
Well, let me ask you something. You had a criminal case as well?
No, I have a friend who's a criminal attorney.
Oh,
And
so you didn't have a criminal case. You were just taking advice from a criminal attorney?
yeah, I didn't know that I shouldn't have done that because it's a whole different ballgame.
Ms. G, what do you think of that?
The difference of criminal court and family court. I think there is a huge need for reform. And I mean, I've written out this repeal act for the 1997 Adoption and Safe Families Act. It's called the Family Preservation and Safe Children's Act. And it's extensive, but it's pretty awesome. Instead of showing up and just in case, let's take the child just to be on the safe side. They put the caseworker in the house for a week, and there'd be 3 different divisions of the CPS. There would be a task force, because I know when you protest, you get a task force. And so this would be the divisions of people who would watch them, like the feds and the vans. If there's domestic situations like assault, they'd have police officers there. But the caseworker would be sitting in the home for a week, and then write your assessment at the end of the week. Go over it with the family, and have the house wired for sound as well. I would much rather have cameras and microphones all over my house and have my child taken from me, just kicking and screaming. That's not okay. And that's just the beginning of it. There's so much more to it. And I mean, something needs to change. A lot needs to change. These people need to be trained. Like, if you're going to take my child, you better be well versed on the behaviors of abuse, abusers, victims, instead of just going off of hearsay. And no more anonymous calls. If you're going to save a child, be proud of it. There's so many things that need to change with that. We look to these people. We expect them to do what's right when it comes to our children, and they don't. And they leave us broken and our kids confused. I mean, to terminate somebody's rights, some of these women say you don't display. No one said this to me, but I heard another woman say that this caseworker told her she did not display an ability to make decisions. It's like, are you kidding me? Who are you to say that to somebody? It's just horrible things. And they don't uplift these people. They don't strengthen the families. They go in, they make excuses, they take the kids, and they break people. And part of their protocol sometimes is like, let's take the children and then do a mental health assessment on the parents. Well, of course they're going to be messed up. You just took their children from them, the whole situation is heartbreaking and it needs to change. I just don't know where to start. I could start a nonprofit. I could deal with my case personally, but every day that I think about it, it makes me sick. And it hurts my heart when I hear other people's stories and they can't do anything about it.
Did you say you lost your parental rights?
No, I allocated them.
What does that mean?
It's like a temporary agreement. You allocate your rights, then you can, if you follow the court's decision for you to go to domestic relations court, I do believe it's called, and open a case and have rules and like a plan, then I might have been able to get her back. But I thought my mother and myself could work something out together. And I just told her last week that I am done. I'm fed up. I told her I was taking her to court. I showed all my cards. I shouldn't have done that. But I was so upset because it was a holiday and I allocated my rights and to her and him. So this guy, he's something else. He makes up excuses for me to not see my child all the time. It's like every time I get close to her and I spend more time with her, they make up some golden rule. Like, oh, well, you shouldn't have taken her to McDonald's that day. Why would you do that? So I don't get to see her for 3 weeks.
So you do have court-ordered visitation then.
Yeah.
What's the visitation schedule you have?
It was supposed to be if I had 6 months of proven sobriety, like I sent her proof of my UAs, then I could get overnights. And that only happened once. And so it was just me going to see her once, maybe twice a week for 2 to 4 hours at a time.
Well, why haven't you, or do you even know how to enforce the visitation orders that the judge made?
That's really all they said that had to happen. And I don't know.
Wait a minute. That's not what I asked you. You know, you have court-ordered visitation.
Mhm.
If this, then that, overnights. So that's actually a court order. I haven't read your court order, but I doubt that it gives the grandparents the right to change the court order. So
Yeah.
when the grandparents don't follow the court order, you can take them back to court to make the judge order it and make the judge tell them you got to give her the unmonitored overnight visits. Have you done that?
No, I am kind of an extremist. Like whenever I think about taking her to court, I'm just like, I want her 100% of the time. I don't want her to see them anymore. And I want her with me all the time. Every time I see her, she just wants to be with me. She throws fits at every visit, and she has since we started these visits. When it was caseworkers supervising, she would freak out. She'd want to get in my car. She wouldn't let go of my leg. Like, Mommy, I don't want to go. I want you to go with me. And that's hard. And I kind of just want to get her back. I don't want her to be with that creep, and I don't want her to be with my mother. I don't know how she could turn such a blind eye to this, but
Well, Miss
she
Carroll,
has.
if you don't want the child to be there, what are you going to do to change it?
My main barrier has been housing and just lack of confidence. I mean, it's taken a while for this all to set in, and I thought really my mother would give me more leeway and would actually probably give me my child back most of the time. But since it's been 3 years, and after this Christmas, when something happened that was distasteful, I am hell bent on taking her to court. I just have to go to another state to get housing because I've had a problem with that since I moved out of her house.
Does the city where you live have a housing authority
Yeah,
that can help you with getting subsidized housing?
yeah,
Have you applied?
I have, and I had everything sent to their house and they shredded it. I just think I want to go for a more immediate approach. Like, would it be bad if I left the state to get housing? Because I've had a place out there for years. I mean, yeah,
Yeah. You know what, Miss Carroll? You are developing a strategy based upon just gut level feelings, not the law, not on how to persuade a judge to give you back the child or to enforce. And you're telling me, and this is with all due respect to you, but you're telling me, I feel, I feel. Miss Carroll, the case isn't about how you feel. The case is about one thing: winning, getting your child back and getting your unmonitored overnight visits. Okay? Now, have you ever watched this channel before where Miss G or I have mentioned that?
no,
Okay. Are you new to my channel?
I've watched a few videos. Like I said, I used to watch the Meet the Expert videos. I love those. Love those. And then the CPS horror stories with Cynthia. I went to grade school with her, so um, I'd watched a lot of those and listened to a lot of those long stories. And
Cynthia just got married, by the way.
I know. I'm so happy for her. She's so awesome. She's a great person.
Well, Miss Carol, I want to offer you a free consult to tell you some things that I think might work that work in California. Right? I'm not licensed in Colorado, but if your case was in California, this is what you can do, and I'll tell you that. And then you have to find a lawyer in Colorado that's going to help you. You just have to find that you're not going to be able to do it yourself. I know people think they're going to do it themselves, but they're not. I think I gave the statistic: 1 out of 1,000 people do it themselves.
And get lawyers. Yeah.
No, they do it without a lawyer. One out
Oh,
of 1,000. That's a very low percentage.
yeah.
It's less than 1%. A lot
Yeah.
less than 1%. Now, the way I look at it is, and Miss G and I were having a conversation about this a couple days ago. Miss G is of the opinion, I think, that if you lose your child, that you do everything that you can and do it the right way. Would that be fair to say, Miss G?
Yes.
Okay. So you, Miss Carol, are developing your own strategy, and you don't have any knowledge of the laws, the court system, the procedures, the rules of evidence. You're going by just gut level feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's a bad strategy.
I know.
And here's the thing, and I know Miss G will disagree with me, but the bad strategy you're using may be the cause of you not winning, not that the fact the judge is corrupt.
True. I mean, I haven't even taken it to court yet because I heard I only get one chance. I read somewhere that I get one chance every 2 years. And I'm just scared. Like, if I blow it, then they'll try and file for permanency or something. And I've let them have the proverbial feet on the back of my neck for so long. It's like, as long as I get to see my kid, it's okay. Just do whatever you want, say whatever you want. And that's not acceptable, really. But you're right. Yeah. To know like what I'm doing would be awesome. For sure. Because I definitely didn't know what I was doing when I was involved with the courts, when I dealt with CPS, and that was a horrible experience.
Have you called any attorneys in your area, in the Colorado area, and asked them for a free consultation?
Um, Free, no. A lot of them offer pretty expensive ones, and then they tell me their rates and then their hourly rates, and I'm like, wow, okay, I'll give you a call later. 'Cause it's pretty expensive. A lot of them are pretty pricey, but I have called around. It's been a while. It's like,
So are you saying that money is keeping you from getting your daughter back?
um, kind of, but more so the fact that I just don't have stable housing, and I haven't been able to find it since all this happened, and I moved out of my mother's.
That's related to money, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, when you talk to a lawyer, he or she might be able to suggest to you how to solve that housing problem. I mean, we were just talking, and if you lived in Los Angeles County, I'd refer you, if you were my client, I'd refer you to the housing authority in Los Angeles, or the housing authority in whatever city you lived in. There's federal programs that help people of low income get free or subsidized housing. There's a very well-known federal program called Section 8. You might want
Yeah.
to Google Section 8 housing, see what it comes up with for your area.
Yeah, they just have long wait lists and stuff, and
Right, they do. You got to get on them. If you had got on them 3 years ago, we might not be having this conversation.
you're right.
So get on the list. Get on the list. Miss G, any comments before I let Miss Carol go?
No.
Okay. All right, Miss Carol, you know what? I want to thank you for being a guest on the show tonight. And if you want to call in and book a free consultation with me, please do so.
I would love that.
Bottom right-hand corner of the screen, 888-888-6582, and I'll tell you what to do if you were in California. And then you can check that out with an attorney in Colorado, and then you can go from there. But you got to take steps forward every day. One step, one step, one step. Now, will you ever take a back step? Yeah, that's how life is. You got to pick yourself up and move one step the next day. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you again for being on. Keep in contact with us. Let us know how things are progressing, and I'll wait to hear your call. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Miss G, hold on. I am a little under the weather, so I'm thinking about ending the show tonight a little early. Was there anything that you wanted to talk about this evening?
Yeah, I just wanted to let people know that so I had a call today from a mother that has two teenage kids in the system. One of the teenage kids, well, she hired us. So one of the teenage kids told her that she doesn't want to come home. So the social worker told the mother to give up and give up her rights. So the mother was so embarrassed to tell the family that. So what she told them is that Mr. Davis told her to give up and let the children go. You can't make them come to you. So I was on the call, the second call with Attorney Davis and this lady, and I heard everything. But then when I told her I heard the conversation, she changed she changed the conversation into, well, the worker told me that and to give up. I said, so it's not Davis, right? So she said, well, he told me that in his office. I said, Attorney Davis would never say that. So she finally admits that the reason she said that to her family and friends, that Attorney Davis told her to give up on her kids. So people are like, why did you pay for him then? Why would an attorney tell you something like that? So she said, because she cried, she said because she was too ashamed to tell the family that she's giving up on her kids because she doesn't want the kids to think she gave up on them. So it's very sad, very disturbing. Um, she doesn't want Attorney Davis to be there in her next hearing. She wants to settle for the court appointed attorney to lose. And which is sad, very, very sad. I literally had to tell her it broke my heart, but I told her I have no respect for you. But she said to me, you know what, Miss G, I understand, but thank you for your help. And she, I could never give up. I can't. And social workers will tell you everything, and they will discourage you. They will bully you. They will, especially when you're near victory. What she doesn't understand is that she's near victory, like no joke. And she still believes the social worker because the social worker told her no judge is going to make a child go to you if they don't want to go to you. So it's very, very horrible game that they play. And I want you guys not to listen to social workers. I want you guys not to be discouraged. Please, I'm begging you, just stay focused and stop listening to the bullying. Because bullying someone, especially about their children, you can't get any lower than that. Um, so I hope she's listening, and I hope to God that she understands that they're playing with her and her kids.
You
And
know,
often, mhm,
two quick statements about that. Number one, I routinely tell my clients not to speak to the social worker without me.
Mhm.
Now, a lot of them get the don't speak to the social worker and they leave off without me.
Mhm.
And the reason why I say that is because social workers are highly trained professionals. They have monthly training usually. You cannot defend yourself against the psychological games they play against you. I've had clients tell me I talked to the social worker and she said you're the worst attorney in the courthouse. And for a moment I think he believed it. But these are all psychological and emotional games that they play on you. So I tell you, don't talk to the social worker unless I'm present. But of course, the social worker can be so nice, so inviting that you think that he or she is on your side. And then you talk to them, and then they convince you basically to give up. I think I mentioned this last week. When I was about a 10-year attorney, I used to get upset about that. But now I don't because
Mhm.
people will make their own decisions and it will affect them. I can only, lead them to the water. I can't make them drink.
Mhm.
Okay, so here is another quick story. I think I've told this story before. This happened in another county in California. And the grandfather came to my office to hire me to represent his daughter. And he was a very successful businessman. And he asked me, with the daughter sitting there, can you get the child back to my daughter? And I said, yes, if she follows my directives, I think I can. All right. And it was a fairly simple case. It was a case where she was using drugs, and her drug of choice was heroin. And so we finally go to the first court hearing. Well, the first court hearing after I was um, hired. And the mother had been telling everyone that she was testing clean. So I walk into the courtroom and I see some people that, I know professionally. And one of them comes up to me and said, hey, Vince, you better read the report from the social worker before you set this case for a trial. Because I'm there, I'm ready to, kick some butt and have a trial and get this kid back home. Well, as it turned out, the report said out of the last like 12 drug tests, mother had tested positive 10 times. So I went outside to talk to her about this. And she was standing in a small group of her family members, including the grandfather. She saw me come out and she saw me that I had the report in my hand. She immediately came over by herself, took me by the shoulder, and led me down the hallway. And she knew what I was going to be talking to her about, and she didn't want to have this conversation in front of the grandparents and the other family members because she was still using drugs. And the one thing that she told me was, you know, Mr. Davis, everything that we discuss is confidential. I said, yes, it is. She said, well, I'm going to admit to you that I still use drugs, heroin, and you can't tell anyone in my family. Now, remember, I had a meeting with her father and her when they first hired me. So we go into the courtroom, and of course, we lose. The grandfather is so upset. How could you lose, Mr. Davis, when she's testing clean? I mean, he was like in my face yelling. And because of the attorney client privilege, I couldn't say to him, well, it's because your daughter's still testing positive for heroin. Couldn't say it. To this day, this was probably 20 years ago. To this day, in his mind, I'm the worst attorney in the world. I couldn't win an easy case. So, Georgette, I told you a story the other night about that grandmother and mother who finally testified that they didn't really want the children back. We don't know what's in people's minds. We don't know what issues they have, really, and their family's dynamics. We don't know all of that. We meet them for an hour, hour and a half, and then we go to, do some prep, and go to court. And if your client's not telling you the truth, it's going to be hard to win. I mean, even if you're Johnny Cochran, he can't win that type of case if he was still with us. So you just never know what really is motivating people. And I would bet $1, Miss G, that the client that you spoke to today has other issues going on that you don't know about and that I don't know about. Because it's pretty hard to walk away from your children. I mean, no matter who you are. And I remember meeting with her. She seemed like a very sane and, stable person. But, life is tough.
It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter if you live under the bridge, eating poop. To me, your child is a part of you. Like as a mother, you feel your child before the doctor tells you you're pregnant. You know you're pregnant.
Right.
There's a bond between a child and a mother. They did a study where the baby was crying, crying, crying. As soon as the mother just came, not hug the baby or carry the baby, the brand new baby. As soon as the mother put her head next to the baby and he or she smelled the mother scent, the baby stopped crying. Like they did a study that you didn't even have to hold your baby, that all they need is their mother next to them. This is a special bond. This is a gift from God. Like I take pregnancy and children a gift. Marriage is also a gift if you choose the right partner, that is. But marriage is also a gift. So when you have a family, it's a great gift.
Mhm.
And to me, I could not. To me, again, I don't know. You could be right about people's lives. I get it, but again, if I live under a bridge eating shit, I could not see my kids go. I just can't process that. And I think it's a very traumatic thing. It's a great loss to a mom because it's like it's might as well just for them to kill you than for you to see your children leave you.
Mhm.
It's hard. It's very hard.
Before we go this evening, I want to answer one question. Charlotte Fay, watching us on YouTube, says, "Question: If my parental rights were terminated, does it mean my case is closed? Question mark. I filed an appeal for my rights and the denial of the 388." So technically, Charlotte, the case is not closed. The case is still open because your appeal is pending. As a matter of fact, until your appeal is ended and the remitter is issued by the Court of Appeals, the case is still open. Now, does it mean that you're in a strong position to do anything? No, it doesn't mean that. And I've seen people treated on cases I've been watching or involved with. Once you lose your rights, you're like persona non grata, even if you do file an appeal, right? And so you have to be careful. Georgia, we have a client right now in Northern California who appealed her termination of her parental rights, and she won the appeal. She won the appeal. Now, I wasn't her attorney at that point in time. I'm her attorney now, trying to get the kids back to her. But if anybody ever thinks you never win an appeal on a 2-6, it's not true. Are the odds against you? Yes, they are. But always try, never give up.
Yeah, but you have to also understand you have to have the right attorney for an appeal. Um,
I agree, but we're talking about first steps.
um, so I have
Mindset,
a question. I
mindset.
have a question from a caller today. She's watching the show for the very first time. She said, "I'm still waiting to get a response to my appeal notice, and no one had contacted me regarding my last order to video call my baby. Foster mom had been sabotaging me for a long time with the social workers and using me at the same time. Knowing I wanted to see my baby, she allowed herself to bring my daughter for a year now, overnights, without approval from the social worker or the judge. Then the reporting, then of course, the reporting against her during the visitation. She said, my question is, um, is my case is still open, and should I file complaint with the DHHS?
The answer is yes. And if you haven't lost your appeal, your case is technically still open. Here's a question from Deidre. If my remitter issue date is January 30th, presumably 2023, after that date, is my chances gone? The answer is no. Because once you appeal and you lose, you can appeal to the Supreme Court of your state. And presumably, Deidre, you're in California. So you can go from the Court of Appeals to the California Supreme Court. And in rare cases, you can go from the California Supreme Court to the United States Supreme Court. Okay, so your chances aren't gone until you generally, when this, the Supreme Court says you're done. Okay, but you're not even done after that. Georgette will remember that we had a guest on. This has been a few months now, from San Diego. Her rights were terminated. 5 years goes by. She gets her child back. They reinstate her parental rights, and she has her kid back after 5 years of being adopted by someone else. So, can it ever happen? Yes, it can. Are the odds with you? No, they're not. I don't want to mislead you. No, they're not.
Okay, so with this PNC that called us today, after she files with the DHHS, is there any way you can give her advice on how the foster mom allowed the baby to be with her overnight visits for a year without the judge's approval and the social worker's approval, and she has proof of that?
If she has proof, like pictures and videos, she should have brought that up early on in the case. She may have waived that, but we're dealing with kids, and if that was happening, she should bring it up now in some type of motion.
Mhm.
I had a similar case where a relative was trying to get custody of the child, and the social worker said that the relative was not fit. But unbeknownst to the relative, excuse me, unbeknownst to the social worker,
Mhm.
the relative was the babysitter for the kid and the foster mother. So whenever the foster mother traveled on trips, and she went on a lot of trips, maybe once a month, she went like on a weekend vacation. And who did she call? She called the grandmother, right? And
Mhm.
then when when the foster mother needed help picking the kid up and taking her to a ballet or to some type of activity, and the foster mother couldn't do it, guess who she called? She called the grandmother. And when I got on the case, the first thing I did when I heard the story, I said, "Well, didn't you tell the social worker?" No. Well, why didn't you tell the social worker? Because the foster mother convinced me that it would be a bad thing and I wouldn't see the child anymore. If the foster mother who was letting her have the illegal visits got in trouble because she was letting the grandmother have overnights and extended visits, the foster mother convinced the grandmother that they would take the kid away from the foster mother and that the grandmother would never see the child again. So she never brought it up. And I brought it up as soon as I got on the case. And you know what the judge said? If this is true, why didn't your client bring it up earlier on? And I tried to explain, but the judge wasn't having it. Sometimes when you sleep on your rights and on evidence, it's not going to be, the probabilities aren't going to be in your favor. I told this to someone who has a domestic violence case recently. Mom filed a domestic violence case against dad. Dad went to court the first time to fight the domestic violence case, but he didn't use any of the recordings he had on his iPhone to show the court that it was really the mother doing the attacking, or at worst, mutual combat. Then when I get involved, I want to bring this up. Judge says too late. So sad, too bad. Now I disagreed with that, and I tried to convince my client to appeal that, but he didn't want to because there was no guarantee of winning. So if you have evidence or you want something, the law on the English common common law system is bring it up early.
Mhm.
Because if you don't, you could lose your rights. Okay?
And Deidre wants to know who files for, she said, who files for my appeal with the Supreme Court?
Okay. If you had a court appointed appellate attorney, they don't do that unless you ask them and they think it's worthwhile in doing. Okay. So if that were the case, you'd have to get your own attorney, but you have to do it fast because the time parameters are very short. So it's not something like you can sleep on for weeks and then decide to do it. Might be too late. Again, if you want to exercise some rights, do it early, do it often. Okay. Hey,
Okay.
Miss G, I have been under the weather the past couple of days, so
Mhm.
I'm going to end the show. We're at 45 minutes anyway. We're at the end of the show, so I want to thank everybody for watching. Thank you, Miss G, for being the co-host tonight. And excuse me, we'll see everyone tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Have a good evening. Good night.